Welcome into this week's edition of the Creighton Basketball Newsletter. I'm Jon Nyatawa with the World-Herald. Wanted to use this opportunity to break down and react to Creighton's defeat to Iowa State, a 64-58 loss to the Cyclones on Saturday. It was a big game, great atmosphere, an opportunity for Creighton to kind of make a statement early in non-conference, or I guess midway through non-conference. Shoot, the Big East season is like 2 weeks away, incredibly. But it's been a couple days, and so, obviously in a game that's on a big stage with a lot of emotion, just wanted to kind of step back a little bit and see, take some time to reflect and go through it again and see what I thought. Obviously, wrote about the game in Sunday's edition of the World-Herald, but you never want to overreact to just one game because obviously there's 31 of them in the regular season, and with this Creighton team in particular, it's been pretty evident to this point already that the Jays have improved, and you would expect them to continue to get better as the year goes on. So ideally, they're a different team in February, and some of the things that we're talking about today maybe don't matter. But I've got a couple encouraging and a couple discouraging things, observations from the game that I think they might end up factoring in even in February when Creighton has advanced to a different stage in its development. Before I share that, just wanted to remind you, if you have not subscribed to this newsletter, you just happened upon this video, well, we got a newsletter that this is a part of. You go to omaha.com/newsletters, you put that into the browser, go to the website and just click the little box, and then all of a sudden you got an update every Tuesday on Creighton hoops that's outside of what we normally do, just exclusive for Jays fans. So subscribe to that. Obviously, give us a subscription to the World-Herald to consider that to support the great work that all my colleagues do here at the newspaper. Be greatly appreciated. Iowa State Creighton. So the general just sort of the big picture reaction to the game is obviously it was a disappointment for Creighton to lose and did so many things, so many mistakes that you can look back on and say, if only they would have had that play back or those two plays back, maybe the outcome becomes different. I'm thinking specifically about the end of the half when Creighton got outscored 7-0 in the final 67 seconds. There's probably like 5 or 6 things that I think the Jays would probably wish they could have back. But generally speaking, this game, if the Jays are able to take the lessons from it and apply it to their practice, to the next game that they play, if they use it as a learning experience, then this game won't sting as badly. In January and February, we're not looking back on this game and wondering if it was a precursor to the way the season was going, if it was a glimpse as to what to expect, maybe an ominous sign, so to speak. But the Jays do have to take those steps to, as Coach McDermott mentioned after the game a couple of different times, just, I think he used the words, we have to be mature enough to self-assess and say, all right, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things, or 5 things that I could have done differently that would have had an impact on the outcome of the game. And it can be very specific and maybe even subtle in terms of communicating a screen, or it can be something as big as making a pass that led to a easy dunk, that was intercepted on the perimeter and led to an easy dunk. So there were a lot of things that the Jays hope that they can get better at, and so we'll see if they can, and that process is going to be kind of gradual, and it won't always be linear. Like you won't always say, okay, well, Creighton keeps taking steps forward. You can see that the Jays are better against BYU than they were against Iowa State, or they're better against Villanova than they were against BYU and Iowa State. It won't always work like that, but I think the idea is that when you look back, say on January 1, the team is improved from where it was on December 1 versus November 9th. And to this point in the year, that's happened. Creighton is a better team today than it was when it started the season, and it's got to keep continuing on that track of improvement. But about this game specifically, I had a couple things that I thought were encouraging. One was Creighton's defense. I mean, those guys, they really locked in on that end, and they put themselves in terrible positions defensively where when you're giving away live ball turnovers, you have to sprint back defensively and get set up and structured, or into your structure, and you got to communicate. And that's usually an opportunity for opposing offenses to feast, because you're still backpedaling or still trying to get organized, and they're in attack mode in the open floor, trying to find a good shot at the rim or on the perimeter. I mean, you've seen it from Creighton. That's the Jays. That's been sort of their MO in Greg McDermott's tenure, transition offense. And so Creighton put itself in bad situations defensively by turning the ball over, yet still defended really well. I mean, I was impressed by by Creighton's players' ability to stick to the scouting report. Isaiah Brockington is a guy who has had some really big games already this season. He didn't make a shot until midway through the second half. I think maybe 8 minutes to go was the first time that he got loose and got a jumper. And then he hit a couple big shots too down the stretch for Iowa State. But to hold him down for that long, I thought was impressive by the Jays. Gabe Kalsher for Iowa State never made a shot. He's a potential sharpshooter. He's got a post-up game too. You know, I think he had a couple free throws, but Creighton did a good job on him. So I thought scouting report specific, Creighton's ability to execute a plan was impressive. Their energy and activity defensively was good too. They made every shot tough, it seemed like, even at the rim. So if that can be their calling card, if that's what this team identity is, again, I think we got to allow them the opportunity to kind of find themselves. But if they are going to be a team that defends first, that's fine. And that's a good starting point given the athletes and apparently the buy-in that they've shown so far on that end of the floor. If they can become consistent there, that's a workable blueprint, right? So I think that was really encouraging. The other thing on the offensive end I thought was encouraging was Ryan Hawkins. I mean, he's the Division II transfer who's had obviously some great moments and made a ton of winning plays so far this year. But he finished with 25 points. And I wrote about it a decent amount going into the year, and I'm sure you've heard the coaches talk about his three-point shooting percentage. He's a career 41% three-point shooter at Northwest Missouri State. And so all throughout the preseason, he was the best shooter on the team, most consistent guy. And so to see him knock down some threes, even a couple deep ones, that wasn't a surprise. And I think he's maybe shot it at a lower rate than he is capable of to start the year. Certainly started slow from long range, but he's a good shooter. We knew that. The question that I had about him was whether or not his interior game, just whether it's post-ups or you saw some drives where I think he had this one drive late in the game where he drove down the middle of the lane, jump stopped in front of a defender who was trying to set up and draw a charge, jump stopped and pulled up for a floater. When you watched him at Northwest Missouri State, he had a ton of different ways that he could score inside. And he's patient down there on the block, a lot of post-ups, just knew how to read angles well, and can finish with one hand maybe in a different way than your traditional sort of stop and shoot, scoops, floaters, all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of curious if that would translate to this level, just because you got to, more athletes, higher quality of athletes, scouting report specific stuff as well. And at least, through this point of the season, I think it has. And he's been Creighton's go-to guy to this point. When the Jays have needed buckets, they've turned to Ryan Hawkins to break down the defense, whether he's backing someone down or against Iowa State. Again, he got going downhill in the middle of the defense and ended up making a lot of plays for himself, but that was kind of based on the way Iowa State was playing. They were really pressed out on Creighton shooters. They didn't want the Jays to move the ball around, but he's shown already this year that he's willing to make the extra pass and create for other players. So I thought he was a bright spot. Obviously, 25 points, you're thinking, okay, yeah, he was a bright spot. But I just think the way that he got that 25 was encouraging, because I think that is something that can translate to Big East play. And so while you will certainly see teams try to find ways to take away some of his go-to shots, but he's so clever and so quick. He seems to be one step ahead. He kind of knows, maybe that's kind of coming from experience, how much college ball he's played. But I feel like once he gets settled into the game, he's a really tough offensive option to stop. So that's obviously a good sign for the Jays. They need to get everyone else around him going and build some confidence with those guys, but what he did was really impressive. The discouraging side against Iowa State, I mean, you got to start with the turnovers. 21 turnovers, the most since 2008 in a game. So, and a lot of them were just silly, maybe moving too quickly at times, trying to force it a little bit, or getting baited into certain areas of the floor that Iowa State wanted you to take the ball so they could bring a trap and really aggressively pursue the ball. And you know, you got to give the Cyclones credit. They're a really aggressive defense, active with their hands, and they force a lot of turnovers. So just Creighton wasn't able to handle that pressure. And so how the Jays learn from that will be important. I think adjusting to that level of physicality is something that it does take time. And it's an inexperienced roster, so you have to get used to getting slapped on the hand or bumped on cuts or drives. You know, Iowa State fouled a lot, but a lot of them didn't get called. But that happens. I mean, when Big East play comes, they're going to face teams that are going to be really aggressive and trying to push them off their spots. Even if it's just a couple feet off their spots, if they're starting offense a little bit deeper, they're not able to get the proper spacing that they want. Some of that is due to the just sort of physical nature of their opponent. And so they got to adjust to that. Can they? I think so, but the turnover thing's kind of been a trend so far this year. So that's something that the Jays, obviously, they're gonna need to clean up. And the other thing was the bench. And I think that those guys gave great minutes. You saw a guy like Rati on Jon Nyatawa, just like, I mean, he came out and made impact plays and changed the complexion of the game at times with his energy. But only 8 points. They were outscored 30-8 on the bench in terms of bench points against Iowa State. And you know, a guy like Sharif Mitchell still trying to work to get healthy, and so they need to get him right if they can. And there's some youth and experience off the bench, but I feel like having more consistency from those guys to take some of the pressure off some of the starters who are playing a lot of minutes and doing a lot for the team. You know, if Creighton can go 8 to 9 players deep with confidence, you know, it could really serve them well in Big East play as you know, the season starts to drag on and the injuries or just maybe the aches and the pains of the grind of the season start to wear into your body a little bit. So finding some more consistency from the bench I think will be important, and we'll see if the Jays can make the adjustments needed after the Iowa State game, because up next is BYU, and that's going to be as tough of a challenge. They won't have, now they'll be in South Dakota, so maybe some Jays fans will travel, but you won't have the true home court advantage. So it'll be a different atmosphere, a different environment, different tests for Creighton. Certainly BYU's a totally different, they're going to attack you totally differently, but it'll be a good learning opportunity for Creighton and a chance to gain a marquee win in the non-conference, which the Jays are still missing. So we'll see how they handle it. That's all for now. I appreciate you guys watching, and all those who've subscribed, thank you. If you haven't, please consider it. I'm Jon Nyatawa. Thanks for watching.